Hi, welcome to Culture Shop. I had a bit of a vigorous discussion this week with a colleague, an industrial psychologist, a big proponent of behavior change, something which I'm really not. And we were talking about whether or not it actually works and what the science behind it really is. People like him are brought into organizations, especially large ones, when there's a new strategy in place or something's about to change and they want people to start looking in a similar direction. And they've decided that the behaviors they want out of the workforce that they've got aren't the ones that they really need. And so they go through these very exhaustive sessions. And there's all sorts of clever science and wizardry and Harry Potter stuff that gets brought into this, learning styles and personality types and all of this kind of thing, as they try to unravel all of this complexity and work out how it is that they can get people to behave in a similar way, according to a fixed set of guidelines that might only just have been created. And the funny thing is, this is my point of view, it almost never works, i.e. you see these things happen and then there's a bit of a behavior change and everybody's very happy as you measure it, but the complaint generally is that within 6 months or a year, everything slipped back to the way it was again. And why, what's wrong with employees? Why does this always happen? What should we do about it? But here's the weird thing. When you think about how human beings are in life, your friends, your family, your partners, all of those sorts of things, there are people who are very, very capable of behavior change in the face of new data, new circumstances, new ideas that they agree with, because in their own lives they're largely self-policing. At work, what we're often doing with these sort of behavior change programs is we're telling them how to be, telling them how to think, which often has absolutely nothing to do with the way in which they perceive it. That's problem one. But problem two is this, and it's much deeper than that. See, we often don't like to admit what we already know. They say you can ignore the truth, but you can't ignore the consequences of ignoring the truth. And people going back to their original behavior is one of the consequences of ignoring the truth. Because the truth is, the majority of behavior change programs fail because they're focused on the wrong people. They're focused on employees. Let's try and get them to behave differently. Whereas the employees are ultimately, on a day-to-day basis, they are guided by leaders who we do not try and change. We don't do all the behavior change programs with those people, which means they go about their own way, they go about being exactly as they always were, and ultimately this slipping back of employees being back to the way they always used to be, well, that's just almost to be expected. It's a consequence of ignoring the truth. And you know how that works. Somebody goes on training, they go on this great innovation course, they come back and they're all ready to sort of innovate and be disruptive and be brilliant, but they're told, yes, but don't do that here, or don't think too much about it. Or they're told, let's go and hire a bunch of people. We want people who really shake up our thinking and get us different and all that. But we actually want them to be much more like us. And so the first thing we do is we try to file all those edges off because they're different and they must fit in. It's that kind of thing. It's leadership-driven status quo defensive behavior. They're trying to keep it as it is. And they may not necessarily be trying to do that. And by the way, maybe I'm talking to you personally. You may not be trying to do that consciously, but it's a very normal sort of organizational behavioral thing. This is what happens. We try and change all the behaviors down here. We don't change any of the behaviors up here. We end up getting pretty much the same behaviors as we used to get. We try and change them again. We assume the problem is down here, but this is where we need to be focusing. This is always where we've needed to be focusing. And not doing that is simply asking for things to remain the same. That's why I don't believe in behavior change. I'm not saying it can't have some sort of veracity. I'm not saying it can't have some sort of strength. But it's never going to happen if we're focusing in the wrong direction. Have a great week.